am so excited to have John Hrabovsky, owner of Travel Champs and Humble Comfort House, on the show today. So welcome, John.
Well, thank you, Ann, for having me. This is awesome. It's fun to finally connect with you and get on your show here. This is exciting for me.
You're exciting. You're a serial entrepreneur who started your career first as a nurse. So how did you make that transition?
I had a mentor, right? Most of us in life have a mentor, someone they look up to, right? So I came from a very typical, middle-class family. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a state trooper. I have three older sisters, which ironically, none of those three sisters are nurses. I'm the only nurse. I had a mentor growing up. I was a kid at home. We lived on, Beach Avenue, right down from St. Joan of Arc Church. And, one of the guys on my block was an entrepreneur. He owned 7 car washes. He was an inventor. He was just a down to earth farmer, entrepreneur. So growing up, he was my mentor. I would hang out with Sam. So he would give me the opportunity to make money at age 11 or 12. I'd cut his grass and I'd get paid $7. I'm thinking, wow, it took me like 45 minutes. I made $7. That's pretty good. Growing up, I cut local neighbors' grasses and stuff, but he was a big influence in my life. He gave me some good books to read and things like, Charlie Tremendous Jones and, Paul Danforth and motivational books to say, hey, there's more to life out there than just getting a job, going to school and buying into okay, I got a job. Now I got to go to work 8 hours a day. And Anna, I'll tell you, kind of like you, every career I had, it wasn't like a job to me. I got into the restaurant business, cutting grass, shoveling snow. I worked at Lucy's Cafe. And then after, working there, you get to meet people. You meet the bartenders, you meet the wait staff. And then what do you do? What do you do? And then more importantly, the clientele coming in. And if you look out in the parking lot and they're driving Mercedes, they might have a Cadillac. And it's just like, it's interesting. So I have an outgoing personality. I would say, hey, what do you do? Unequivocally, it was 100% they owned a business. They owned some type of business that helped them accumulate, I don't want to say wealth, but on average, more than $2.10 an hour. I just kind of listened and learned. I went through the ranks of dishwasher to a busboy. Then I jumped ship and worked at DeAngelis restaurants, and I was a cook. So along those ways, I really got to learn how to interact with people and say, wow, what is out there? So, as I age, you need to make money, right? You need to get a job. So what are you going to do? Go to work, get a job. And I did that. So I'm thinking, well, what kind of job do I want to do that I'm going to like? I was a gas station attendant. That was boring. It was a fun job, but back then, just wasn't for me. And then I joined the fire company. I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. I was 18. I was a senior in high school, and I got my EMT certification. That was my first exposure to EMS and pre-hospital care and a career opportunity. When I got my EMT certification, again, what a great job, right? You get to learn and help people. You're riding the ambulance. It's a lot of energy, a lot of thrills, red lights, sirens, people getting out of the way, bringing you in to help people, which is important. So my first job at age 18 was Hershey Park. I worked in the first aid unit. Wow, that was nice. And that was good, right? That was $5 an hour, man, to drive around a golf cart, work in Hershey Park, EMS. And then that job let me into Hershey Park Arena. I'd be EMS for the hockey games. I got to meet the hockey players. And then it just kind of opened up again, more access to different people. And again, resoundingly, the people that had more than what I was used to owned businesses. And I'm thinking, okay, so there's a common denominator. And I read this one book, it was by Jake. It just kind of resonated with me. I want to maximize my time, right? So rather than go to job from, 9 to 5 and make whatever, how can I maximize my time? And that's when it hit me. It's like, all right, I need to do something that I can maximize my time, but using other people's time. And it was in business. So my first business, I was in a lot of businesses, and I'm just trying to think. We all tried multi-level marketing. It's in the multi-level marketing movement. And then I was in Amway back in the day, but that wasn't for me. That seemed to cost me more money than I was making. So there you just kind of say, okay, what can I do to pivot to make more money? But then there were times where I wasn't making any money. And then I was 18 19, and my mom was saying, Johnny, be a nurse, go to nursing school. I'm not going to be a nurse. I don't want to be a nurse. It's kind of weird, 21 years old.
Stereotype for
It was.
stereotype, right?
It was. And I'll tell you the turning point. I thought I'm going to enroll in this paramedic program because I was an EMT firefighter for Hershey Fire Company, and it was a natural segue to be a paramedic. What happened I stepped on a nail at a fire of all things. It went through my boot and I had to go to the ER, right? And to get a tetanus shot. It was kind of embarrassing. This big brawny guy, firefighter steps on a nail. So I'm in there and this guy's taking care of me. And I thought, oh, hey, doc, I'm John, firefighter. He goes, my name's Bill. I'm a nurse.
Oh, I've got all the parts.
And I'm thinking, wow, and this guy was uber cool. So we started talking. He goes, listen, you're on the right track. He goes, you're an EMT. You're going to be a paramedic. He goes, just go one more year and get your RN degree. You will always have a job and you will always make good money. And that stuck in. I'm thinking, wow, what a great backup plan. If I get my RN, I could literally get a job anywhere and make money. And that was my security blanket. That allowed me to take more risk, more chances for me to try and open more businesses. If I failed, I was never going to go hungry. And plus, I was living at home, so I was that always helped. I was 3 years old, already an established EMT, established paramedic, working at Polyclinic Emergency Department. And then when I graduated nursing school in the spring of 1984, I had a job working in the ER and everything was good to go. And then there was an opportunity, and I happened to have met my wife in nursing school, Sharon. We're still married today, 36 years later. So I was one of 4 guys in my nursing class, and there was 114 women, and it was awesome. So when I graduated, she lived in Enola, and I lived in Hershey. During our time dating in nursing school for a couple of years, I would drive to her house, and up along routes 11 and 15 there's a restaurant still there today called the Whistle Stop, and it was closed down. It was a family business that it just shut down, and kids didn't want it, and the guy was just trying to sell it. It's been for sale for years. So I was driving by that. I'm thinking, wow, an ice cream shop. That's interesting. Seasonal business. So, I talked to the guy, and he goes, yeah. He goes, I'll sell it. It's I'm looking for $110,000, and then I'll teach you how to run the business. It's turnkey. We just got to get you in here. Okay. So where am I going to get $110,000? So I go back to my mentor and I say, hey, Sam, here's an opportunity. I said, what do you think? He goes, well, let's do some research. So Sam was in the business of the car wash, but he had friends in other industries, and one of them happened to be the Twin Kiss. He knew the guy who owned the Twin Kiss in High Spire and the Tropical Treat in Elizabethtown. So we went and had a meeting with them, and they said, yeah, it could be a lucrative business, but are you willing to work? Are you willing to pay the price? Because in the food business, you got to be there. I didn't know any different. Sure, I'll do that. And he loved me so much. He co-signed the note. Bam, the Whistle Stop. We added the name John. John's Whistle Stop came to fruition, and it's still there today. So the restaurant still thrives today because that was one of my failures. My expansion did lead to a bankruptcy, which we'll get to in a minute. I'm an EMT, paramedic, nurse, have a great job in the ER, and now my mom's really ticked off because I'm buying this ice cream store. She goes, what are you doing, Johnny? So for a couple years, I would work night shift as an RN and then take a nap, get up, and go work at the ice cream store. And then we started to build the business. And then through that, you meet other business owners. So there was a couple guys would come in that owned a 7-Eleven or a Unimart or a pizza shop. My niche was pulled pork barbecue, fresh cut fries, and soft serve ice cream. I wasn't making a lot of money at that because you have employees. I would go work a night shift, and that's where I was getting a paycheck. But it was a lot of work for years. And then other people would come in and say, man, you're energetic, you're enthusiastic, or do you want to consider joining me in my business enterprise? We'll join forces. And then this is where the school of hard knocks comes in, because you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. You trust people, you have people in mind. You say, let's go to work and do some business. So I'll fast forward. I'm treating me very successful. I had a seasonal employee, the high school kids worked for me. My sister helped me manage when I wasn't there. and we were operating for close to 10 years. And but during that tenure, I was a little more successful, make a little extra money at the ice cream store, being a nurse. And then, Ann, I was I was selling my shifts because I was a nurse and a senior nurse.
Are you selling your shifts?
So because I was making more money per hour. I don't remember what it might have been. Let's say $20 an hour back then, $19 now, which was a really good paycheck. But my counterparts were only making $13, $14 an hour. So I would say, hey, I was on the schedule, but I paid Abby or Jennifer or Selena to work my shift because I'm still making $4 an hour, and I'm paying them cash. So it was a win-win situation, and and I did it for a couple of years, and then finally, I guess it trickled upstream because there was no real guidelines or policy as far as is that legal, is it illegal, and it was a win-win. There's a nurse covering my shift. They're making cash. I'm still making $4 on the side. And today they call that agency nursing, like employment services.
Yeah.
I was ahead of my time because that's what I was doing. I just didn't know what I was doing. I'm just thinking, I make more than you. I'm going to pay you cash of what you're making, and then I'll take the difference. So anyway, so that did come to a stop. But it was another way for me to make a little extra money on the side. So when I expanded the ice cream store, there was a whole lot of noise. And a long story short, I ended up filing bankruptcy in 1993. So when I went bankrupt in 93, my wife had just had her first child. I was back to work at the Hershey Medical Center. And I worked in the emergency department there, so I always had a good job, making money. And, we went Chapter 7. And so basically it was a fresh start, clean start. And then that was in, say, 1993, 94. I had my dream job. I worked in the ER for a little bit, and I got a job on the Penn State University Hospital's Lifeline. I was a flight nurse. It was awesome, and it was great because of my previous experience that set me apart from my competitor. I had ambulance experience, I had ER experience, and now I would learn the job as a flight nurse. The only thing I didn't have was critical care experience, like working in the hospital in the ICU. But they trained me for that. So that's where I started back in my nursing career. So during that time, as a flight nurse, I met another friend, Andy, and back then, Ann, we didn't have these smartphones, right? We didn't have any of this technology. We had the Motorola flip phone at best. The digital signal. And I don't know if you remember the Palm Pilot, a PDA.
Yeah, the Palm Pilot.
Yeah,
what is it called?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the version of the smartphone. And so, but being a nurse, right? I'm always thinking. So, Andy Moore, a lot of paperwork in medicine, right? You see the doctors today. There's so much paperwork. And in ours in pre-hospital, in addition to a medical record, we had to do what's called NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Authority, crash data. So if we pull up on the scene, was it a driver or a passenger? Were they wearing a seatbelt? Where were they in the vehicle? So all this data that we would collect, and it would take us probably 90 minutes of paperwork when we got done with the flight. And it is what it is. We did it. So and then it was a big dot sheet. It was huge. Had little dots because Hershey Medical Center wasn't Hershey Medical Center. It was 1351. I wasn't John Hrabovsky. I was like 4501. And you had a big book to launch it. Anyway, so I'll fast forward. And Andy, so again, we're creative because he came up with an access database to say, why do I have to rewrite all this information when the dispatcher collected that information? The dispatcher knew the name, the location, the address. So he created this little app to go in there and take the data from his computer into an access database. And I'm looking at this thinking, wow, we could sell this. This is amazing. I said, you're onto something here. So we created a company called Med Media. We had to go through intellectual property, licensing, to work with Penn State's Applied Research Lab. And that PDA I was telling you about, we licensed co-developed it with the Applied Research Lab at Penn State because it was a great idea. And we were industry experts, right? So John and Andy were the nurses at the bedside, taking care of the patients. And we knew what we needed to do and what was important to us. Our competitors were engineers. They're like, all right, we're going to give you this technology. And it wasn't bad. It just made no sense to us because they're worried about collecting your Blue Cross Blue Shield information. They're worried that the workflow was totally backwards for us. The other thing is, if you remember computing, do you remember the DOS computers? There was the green screen, there's DOS based. So in 1995, what happened? Windows 95. That was the first version of the new Windows to replace DOS. At the time, there were 3 competitors that were DOS based. So Andy developed his in Windows 95. So right away, ours looked very pretty. And because I was a flight nurse of who I was, I had instant credibility. And I had instant credibility because we were using our own software at our own work. Our medical director gave us permission to create this database. And the rest was history. So again, my days off, I'm out selling software now. And then we were fortunate, we got the Department of Health in Pennsylvania to support us. We got different local federations in the state of Pennsylvania to support us. And then I ended up leaving my job as a flight nurse, and we started this company full time known as MedMedia. We sold the company in 2010. I retired at age 50. I'm at home, right? Life is good. Hershey boy does good. When you're home alone, and literally your kids are getting older now, now it's like, what's going to occur to someone? So now you have this soul searching. Right? It's not about the money. It's not about having. I still live in the same house. So I'm able to squander money. I'm able to my knees, and then I was bored. And then I did start to spend too much money. My wife says, "You got to go back to work. You're spending money." Because I didn't have a job. Right? My lifestyle was still spending, but I didn't have that anymore.
He didn't have a job, but he definitely had that entrepreneur spirit. John ended up partnering with Joe Cigarelli for the business of Travel Champs. And Travel Champs is a promotional hotel, tournament, and apparel company. And as they were working that business, they recognized that the work they did with apparel and embroidery and screen printing extended so much more beyond tournaments. And so they rebranded the apparel, embroidery, and screen printing piece to Hummelstown Print House. So today, for all your promotional needs, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, and more, think about using Hummelstown Print House.